Welcome to the Vintage Vibe. Where today we're going to review a fantastic amplifier made by Onkyo in the mid-90s. The Integra line actually is Onkyo's higher-end series of audio gear. And my very first experience with an Onkyo Integra was in 1989, my very first amplifier that got me exposed to higher end equipment. In this particular Onkyo, the Integra A-927 is an amplifier that never really made it to the North American market. It was a higher end, better built unit that was really geared for the Japanese and European market. So we're going to chat a little bit about Onkyo's Integra line and take a look at the A-927, discuss its quirks, discuss some of its attributes, and finally, whether or not it deserves a place in your vintage audio collection. It is a real sweet sounding amplifier, and it's one of the first things you notice when you fire up the A-927. Everything on this amplifier screams higher end, in particular, its attention to detail. From the curved wood veneer case to the half-inch thick aluminum face and machined aluminum knobs. I almost feel my turntable should have a rising sun flag on it, because this really was one of Japan's pride and joys. So before we talk about this imposing amplifier, let's quickly talk about the company to understand kind of the background and where it came from. Onkyo as a corporation started in 1946. I mean, they've got a long history of audio firsts, including in '56, the very first plastic cone loudspeaker. And it was in 1970 that they created the very first Integra product, the Integra 725, which had a mere 22 watts per channel. And in 1970, that would have cost you $531. I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, heck, that's $24 per watt. And by comparison, in 1997, the A-927 would have set you back about $1,123. Again, not chump change, considering the average amplifier was probably $200 to $300. And by the same comparison, the A-927 would have cost you about $11.23 per watt. Now, obviously, it's a more powerful amplifier, but the point here is that the Onkyo Integra line of products was never expected to be cheap. I mean, you are paying for each watt, each quality watt of sound. And in the typical Onkyo fashion of firsts, Onkyo did away with something called negative feedback, which was commonly used by manufacturers to reduce distortion in amplifiers as well as improve frequency range. Onkyo did away with all that, and they also introduced something really cool called a laser transformer. You heard it, laser. Now, don't get your hopes up, we're not talking about that type of laser. But we are talking about a really cool, despite being upside down, transformer that used dual cores and high-quality custom Wilma capacitors, temperamental but built like a tank Alps pots, and more heat sink per square inch than you can shake a stick at. And if you're in the mood for some romantic candlelight listening, the Integra sounds splendid. Unfortunately, not all is bliss in Onkyo Integra land. These custom pots designed by Alps for the Integra were, well, let's just call it as it is, horrible. So the process of cleaning them actually involves removing these two boards you can see here from the amplifier chassis, and this metal shroud here that says Alps is actually soldered to the bottom of one of the circuit boards. It has to be desoldered to actually expose the mechanism. And the disassembly process is kind of like a Swiss watch, exposing horribly oxidized parts. You can see the legs here on the disc have actually turned black, just as black as the plastic surrounding them. And just gently rub the Q-tip that's soaked in deoxit across all those contacts, and voila. You can see the thick and heavy oxidization on the Q-tip, which is the cause for, or the culprit for, dropping out channels, clicks, pops, and a whole bunch of other nasty things. But you're not done yet, because now you got to disassemble the front, while remembering the orientation once you remove these plastic discs of the little metal wiper inside. Otherwise, when you turn it to CD, you'll get phono, and you turn it to phono, you'll get tuner. And this is what they look like once you clean away what looks to be a grease that's on them, a dielectric grease, as well as all the oxidization. And a tip here for reassembly, you can actually see where I've marked on the plastic of the disc the orientation, so that when I do put it back together, you can get it right. And you have to be extremely careful with these little contact points because they're spring-loaded. And it's very easy to, when you're cleaning them, to actually bend or to change the tension of the spring points, which then will cause you even worse problems than the clicking popping you had before. But taking your time in servicing this Integra is worth it because it is one serious piece of gear. The reward is this amplifier plays extremely clear. There's no hint of distortion. The high frequency and mid-range is to die for. And although the bass maybe could be a little more authoritative, it's nice and tight and taunt, and it sounds just about great with anything you can throw at it. So you obviously know I like how it sounds. Let's talk a little bit about some of the features. The amplifier has all your typical inputs you'd expect, as well as provisions for MC and MM cartridge. Speaker A, speaker B, like you'd expect, as well as some different frequency cutoffs for crossovers, bass, treble. Something unique added here, which you don't see very often, which was really to cater towards the Japanese market, was something called mid-bass presence. And in fact, the crossover points were specifically for the mid-bass and advertised as a way to kind of accentuate vocals and make things sound warmer. As with all Integra products, you usually see a power amp direct switch as well as a tone defeat switch. The cleverly lit and weighted volume knob really is something of extreme quality. Even the RCAs are high quality. You can see here they're nice and thick. They're not chintzy, thin gauge metal that's been plated in gold. Some say Onkyo plays bright. Not at all. It's not a forward amplifier. At best, it's just a very easygoing amplifier, meaning it's fairly neutral. But, it has the ability for you to tweak that sound and to tailor that sound with a slight mid-bass presence. It really does warm the amplifier up. So, what should you expect to pay for an A-927? And is it worth trying to find the limited edition version, the A-929? You can literally find the A-927 anywhere from about $250 to $400, and it is a bargain. The A-929 is near impossible to find, and probably the only reason why you'd want it is because you just loved your A-927 that much. I think the A-927 is a bargain. It's not your typical Onkyo. It's an exclusive Integra product that was meant for the Japanese market. Yes, you're going to have to run it with a step-down transformer, but when you do service the amplifier and you got it up and running, it's something that's going to reward you for years because it's built like a tank. The amplifier is really, truly a beauty to look at. It's fantastic to listen to. I probably listen to it more than anything I have right now in my collection because it is that easygoing and it really does no wrong. And you can find one today, if you can find one today, cheap. So yay or nay as an addition to your vintage audio collection? Well, you know what my thoughts are. Thanks for joining us on the Vintage Vibe.